Hey, what is up guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So in today's video I'm going to be reviewing the final of the free update 1.34 cars, the GAC Maverick, an absolute brutal machine that puts out 1200 brake horsepower and originally started life as a very much a compact Ford Maverick, is certainly not really one anymore. So with the first two cars being fairly surprisingly good, will the GAC Maverick live up to the expectations or will it fall flat? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Let's go ahead and start with the price of this thing. This is 300,000 credits, the standard price for the SEMA show winners. As you can see, it has a PP of 660.37, putting out 1200 brake horsepower. It's turbocharged, weighing around just over 1600 kilograms. So overall, a fairly surprisingly quick machine. And obviously we're not expecting it to be an absolute world beater through the corners, but in terms of its top speed, it's an absolute rocket. So if you've never joined me for a car review video and this is your first time here, this is how it's going to work. What we do is take the bog standard car as you buy it from the dealerships and basically put it for a lap around the Nordschleife to just test out where it's at. After that, we'll then fully modify it as much as possible, which has been fully reset due to the fact that we can now buy special parts and such, and test it out around the high speed ring over in Asia. Then we'll kind of just give my overall opinions and feelings about this car and then whether it is worth the price that it's asking. So let us start off a bit more about the price tag. So where does this sit in terms of the other three cars of the updates? It's the only one that's available at Brand Central, so it's the only one that is not time limited, which means it'll be there for the entirety of the rest of the game's life cycle for you to pick up and purchase. It's mid-tier, so essentially it's second and kind of sits in a middle ground, so it's not the least expensive and it's not the most expensive. That actually goes to the R32 Nismo, the cheapest going to the Alfa Romeo. In terms of performance, especially in terms of its straight line performance, acceleration and such, once this thing gets its power down, it's an absolute monster. However, be warned, when you are trying to get this thing around a track, it is a bit of a brute, which you can probably tell from the clips. It likes to wobble about as you're trying to get that grip. Through the corners, it's not overly quick. However, the acceleration and straight line speed more than make up for that. In all honesty, this is a bit of a world beater. It's insanely fast on the straight sections of any track, and once you've got the grip there, this thing will absolutely launch. I honestly was massively surprised the first time I ever drove this, and every time I've driven it since, it still surprises me just how fast this thing is. But let's talk about how it actually handles. So obviously it's a bit of a brute, it's not the most stable thing through the corners, but it's not as terrible as I actually imagined it to be. I honestly thought this was almost going to be the kind of car that you'd sort of take around a track and it'd handle a bit like a drag car and a bit of a boat, I guess, at the same time. Like, it would not handle a single type of corner, but in all honesty, I'm pleasantly surprised. It's not as bad as I thought. That doesn't mean it's really that good by any means. It's very, very unstable, obviously trying to constantly put all 1200 brake horsepower down, and as soon as that turbo spews up, you're going to know about it. So yeah, as long as you've got a bit of a steady hand and you kind of, you know, get used to the way the car handles, you can probably lap reasonably well with this thing. So the standard version of this car isn't exactly a standard version of the car it really is. So underneath, and I guess in terms of its looks and such, this is a Ford Maverick, a very much a compact car, nothing kind of mind-blowing about it. But obviously it's been massively transformed like most of the other SEMA winners. You know, they may look like a certain car, but there's pretty much nothing left of that car when it comes to actually how the car is. You know, this is certainly not a Ford Maverick, it's more akin to a rocket ship. As you can see by the huge thick rear tires, it's very kind of, you know, the inside as well, it's definitely a bit of a one-off, and it certainly does feel that way in terms of just overall how the car presents itself, the type of car it is. It really kind of sits in its own category of vehicle within Gran Turismo 7. It's certainly by no means a race car, it's not exactly a drag car, and it's certainly not just there for show. It really is, you know, there to actually perform reasonably well. All the parts feel custom, whether that be the front lights, the rear lights, the aero parts, the inside of this thing, you know, the fact that it's got all the digital kind of gauges and such, and you know, it really does feel like a modern car just kind of in a classic shell. It doesn't feel like the old car that it once was. It really does feel rather quite modern, and I guess that's akin to, you know, the people that designed this car, the people that came up with this car for SEMA, and it really does kind of, you know, it makes it worthy of that title and award that it won. So in all honesty, this is certainly a special vehicle. Now I'm going to leave this clip in just to show you how much of a brute this car really can be. So we're coming down to the end of the lap, we're on the main straight, we're going to clip it on the grass, and this thing is absolutely going to launch itself in the air. We did manage to keep the car going, and I did keep it in on the lap. Again, it's just a very twitchy car, but because it kept going after and didn't spin itself all the way around, I did honestly just continue the lap. So yes, we did have a bit of an off, and when I say a bit, we ended up almost flipping the thing, but yeah, overall it was a fairly decent lap up until then. It felt very on edge. I felt like I was getting the most potential out of this thing, at least for the Nordschleife anyway. So with this lap done and the standard version being reviewed, I would certainly say it's worth it alone for the 300,000 credits. But let's go and see how it laps on our lap time leaderboard. This has been reset from the physics update, so it's only a few months old at this point. I believe this is car number 18, and it comes in 10th. So as you can see, it's faster than the XJ220 from the previous update. It's also faster than a GTR Premium Edition, and that's even with the accident. Now I think if we didn't have the accident, it would have been a bit closer to the GTR Nismo, but not quite enough to just pip it. This overall is a fantastic machine. It really is surprising. So that is not where this review ends. We do have to fully modify it, which means putting all the performance parts on. There's no real aero for this thing and such, it's all custom anyway, but I thought I'd do a bit of a tribute by popping on a good old Ken Block livery, just kind of in his memory, because this is certainly the kind of machine that he would have driven. So let's get ahead and review the fully modified version. Now once you've got the performance parts on and such, this thing will go from 1200 brake horsepower to 1400 brake horsepower, and it's even more of a brute. It really is insanely fast, well over 200 miles per hour by the time we get into the left-hander up here. It does mean that because we are going so quick and it really does lack downforce, we do have to slow the car down to get it through the corners, but again, not as much as I originally assumed. As you can see, this thing is just a rocket ship. So then we have to get really heavily on the brakes to get it into the left-hander. Not the best corner by no means, but certainly much better. So as usual, this will follow the trend that it's now on racing soft tyres, so get as much grip and performance out of those tyres as possible. Into the right-hander, this is the tightest section and probably where the car struggles the most. Again, there's so much power, you're having to get on the brakes, there's not an insane amount of downforce, but we do eventually manage to get ourselves back up to speed through the tunnel into the right-hander, and this is where you're going to have to try and hug that curb as much as possible. I believe there was a bit of lift in there, because if you don't, yeah, well, you're in for a surprise. Into the final corner, again, try and ride the bank in. We couldn't quite get it there, it was just a bit unstable into entry, but we've got a decent exit out, and then it's going to rocket itself all the way down to the line. So let's go ahead and see where this car is going to rank. Overall, in terms of my opinion on the modified version, is it worth doing? I'd honestly say yes. I mean, there's not too many modifications for it in terms of performance parts and such, but it certainly is a very strange experience and a very unique one yet again. So overall, it's just not quite as fast as the GTR Nismo that we tested, which means although it's the fastest in terms of its standard performance, it is not the quickest in terms of modified performance. Obviously it is in a straight line, it's an absolute rocket ship, but this one comes in at 758.36 pp, and it did a lap time of a 1 minute 6.787. Overall, about 1.2 off of the GTR Nismo and a good 11 seconds or so faster than the Giulia. So overall, is the Maverick worth your time? Is it worth testing out? And I'd honestly say yes. You know, I saw this car coming into the game and instantly I was kind of intrigued by it. It's something certainly unique and certainly something kind of crazy that you'd see in Gran Turismo. And well, it's kind of lived up to those expectations. It is a great machine. 300,000 credits is the standard price for the SEMA winners. So if you tried anything like the Fugo and such, you are certainly having a very good car. Would I say it's on kind of overall par with the likes of the Roadshop Rampage? In all honesty, no, but it certainly holds its own as a very cool car with insane horsepower figures. So I would certainly say buy it now. Go ahead, pick it up, get your price there, and go ahead and have fun with this thing. That's it from me. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this content. Do be sure to turn your notifications on so you don't miss an upload from me. I upload GT7 and motorsport related content each and every day for your viewing pleasure. Thank you to Poggers and the Controller people for their continued sponsorship, as well as my members, and I will have my Twitter, my Discord, and all that good stuff in the description below. Peace.